Hi everybody, it is the release day for Band on the Run 50th anniversary half speed remaster and the new underdubbed version that we've not heard before. I did a review a couple of days ago of the single disc half speed remaster vinyl. There's a link to that video at the end of this if you want to go and watch that. This is the 2LP version. I was supposed to be getting the 2CD version today as well. It was dispatched at the same time from the McCartney store. Hasn't arrived. Hopefully going to arrive tomorrow. I'll cover it on my live stream that I'm going to do on Sunday night. So for now I'm going to show you this 2LP vinyl and talk about the underdubbed version, which I have listened to, and I've got my notes of what I think of that particular album. So let's show you this then. There's the front cover of this 2LP version, Band on the Run. So it's a nice, it's a card box. I wouldn't say it's a thick sturdy box, but it's not flimsy. Just be careful with it. Basically, you've got the track listings on the back there. Okay, now one question I've been asked several times over the last few days is the underdubbed album here a half speed master? And I don't think it is, going by what it says on the back here. So for the main album it says vinyl cut by Miles Shoal at half speed on Abbey Road, 19th of February. But for the underdubbed version it just says vinyl cut by Alex Wharton at Abbey Road Studios, but it doesn't say at half speed, so I think we can assume it isn't. So anyway, inside here, nothing else inside there. Big question answered. Does the main album come with the Obi strip down the left hand side as all the other versions of the 50th anniversary do? No, it doesn't. I know that's going to disappoint some people. I think it's a curious decision. The only thing I can assume is that it will be difficult to get it in and out of this box. I don't know whether they tried it and found that it was actually difficult to get it in and out. I really don't know, but I would have liked it to have been there, but it isn't, just so you know. So other than that, it is the same as the single LP version here, Band on the Run. Album cover that you will be familiar with. It's still got in here, I'm not going to go into this in too much depth because I did it in that other video and it's covered it in a lot more depth, but inside here you will get a copy of the poster, the large poster that's in most Band on the Run releases. You will get this card that confirms the origin of the half speed remaster that's been used. You will get the traditional album cover, which I didn't notice until somebody pointed it out to me, that it actually doesn't have the lyrics for Hell on Wheels on this, because this is using the original US track listing that included Hell on Wheels. I think this is because this is a replica of probably what's already existed, but that does not include the Hell on Wheels lyrics, even though the song is on the album. This is quite staticky again, not as bad as the one that I got a few days ago, but black LP there, and you can see the label. It does have a small Apple logo at the top there, but not particularly prominent. So like I said, I'm not going to cover that in too much depth because I've done it all already. I'm going to focus more on the underdubbed version here in this video. So I like this. Let me just show you that down the, I don't know if you can see that down the side. I'll show you a photograph. But the front cover of this contains what looks like a page from presumably Paul's passport, showing their sort of visa acceptance into Nigeria, and a couple of other stamps on there from other visits abroad that he'd done around the time. So that's pretty cool. We then open this up, and inside there is another poster, but it is a different poster. It's not the same one that you get in the regular Band on the Run version. So I'm going to open this up and show you it fully. It's different photographs. Okay, so we've got basically here a lot more photographs from the Band on the Run sessions in, I presume, mainly Nigeria. There might be some Abbey Road photos here as well. No, I don't think there is. I think they're probably all Nigeria. So that's good that it's not just a reproduction of the same poster. You've got a lot of photos there that you may well not have seen before from those sessions. One thing that slightly disappoints me with this is that for anybody who's buying this who isn't fully aware of what this underdubbed version is, it doesn't tell you here. Now, if somebody sort of casually thought, oh, it's time for me to buy Band on the Run on vinyl and bought this version, it would just seem like there's a second disc there of rough mixes. What's that all about? So it doesn't really tell you much about what it is. So again, I did a video a few days ago that explains a lot more detail about what the underdubbed mix is. There'll be a link to that at the end if you want to go and have a look at that if you've not seen it already. So inside this sleeve here, this is the underdubbed side 1 and side 2. So you will notice that there is no Helen wheels on this, deliberately, because the underdubbed version, the mix created by Geoff Emerick on 14th of October 1973, didn't have Helen wheels on it. It was a mix that was created in advance of the orchestration being added to the album, and at that stage Helen wheels was never going to be on the album, so there was no reason for it to exist in that mix that Geoff Emerick did that day. The song was all done and dusted and off being pressed as a single by this point. So I have listened to it, as I say, and I've taken notes of what I think of this album. So, Band on the Run, the title track. This has been out on streaming anyway, so you may well have heard this already. It's a guide vocal. Paul hadn't recorded his lead vocal. Remember, this mix was created on the 14th of October. There was still orchestration sessions, none of the brass had been added, there was various vocal parts and other things added later on. So anything that was added later can't exist on the mix that we have here. So it's a guide vocal, there's various guitar overdubs missing, and the big thing that's missing is that huge orchestral section in the middle that links sort of parts 2 and 3 of the song, where it goes into Well the Rain Exploded. So I've got, just as a little example here, what you hear, rather than hearing that full orchestration, you hear a much more sort of stripped down. So you really hear what they'd created in the studio, where Paul had left those gaps for the orchestration to fill it out. Then it's Mamounia. It's in a different order as this to the final album. They hadn't sorted out the album track list at the point where this mix was created. The main difference on Mamounia, Paul's vocal reverb, there's a lot more of it on this, and it feels further back in the mix. And there's plenty of other vocal harmonies that just didn't exist yet at this point, so you won't hear them on this version. Other than that, it's fairly standard to what you know and hopefully love as the song. No Words next. It's a sparse intro because there's no strings. There's a lot of... You sort of realise how much strings there are on the main album when you hear the album without them. So they're not there. But what this arrangement does, it exposes a really nice bass line throughout the song that I'd not really noticed before, but it really sort of stands out nicely now. Really nice. But I thought that the song now... I've always thought that No Words would have fitted better on Red Rose Speedway. But listening to this version, you think, sounds like a Wildlife song now. So that was a really interesting listen. Jet, the intro is substantially different because it's got none of the brass there. You also hear more of Paul's shouting. You hear bits of it in the final version, but you can hear a lot more of that in this because it's there in the mix. It's not covered up by other things. There's quite a lot of the lush backing vocals that exist in the final version of Jet and not here yet. Also, the keyboard solo, the do 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 do, that's not there, hadn't been recorded yet. And the sax riff that's at the end of the song, normally, Paul mimics that vocally here. So again, I think he knew what he wanted. He just knew that it hadn't been recorded yet. And it makes you realise how much the brass is adding to the song. Bluebird, the biggest difference here is that Howie Casey's beautiful sax solo in the middle of the song hadn't been recorded yet, so that's not here. You've just sort of got like a holding place where you've got sort of bits of bass and things just sort of keeping the timing going, but it's waiting to be filled. There's various backing vocals not existing yet. You can tell it's a different mix, it's got a lot more reverb to that. Other than that, it's a fairly complete version of Bluebird. Mrs. Vanderbilt is missing sax solos. Extra layers of backing vocals that hadn't been recorded yet are not there. And there's a lot more sort of vocal messing about at the end. In the final version you hear presumably Paul sort of going like that. There's a lot more of that, a lot more messing around, a little bit like you'd have at the end of Hey Bulldog, for example, with John and Paul messing around. It reminded me a bit of that. 1985. So in the intro, there's some extra reverb on parts of the intro. I couldn't quite tell whether it was keyboard or like a high bass part that had this reverb attached to. Maybe the reverb was masking what it was I could hear, but there was definitely more reverb there. The big thing here, there is no vocals. He hadn't recorded the lead vocal yet at this point, except for the high harmonies. That bit, those couple of times during the song where the song just sort of steps off the gas for a minute and you get some real nice 3-part harmonies in there that just sort of take you from one section of the song to the next. That's there. Okay, that's still there. It doesn't have the overall presence of the final mix, but this was just a provisional mix that was made at the time, so you can understand that. It was never intended to be a final mix. You can also hear more of the lead guitar at the end, where there was orchestration at the end of the song, finally. That's not there now. You can hear more lead guitar there in its place. And thankfully, there is no reprise of Band on the Run at the end, which is... I still don't like that at the end of 1985. It's not here yet. We've then got Picasso's Last Words. The vocal harmonies in the chorus are not all here. Some of them are, but there's definite things missing. It's a different lead vocal. So again, a master lead vocal had yet to be recorded at this point. So you can hear some different phrasing and the odd little bits of different lyrics. There's some of the effects, like sound effects, are missing in the middle. There's also, I think it's a clarinet solo. Is it a clarinet? If you know differently, tell me, please. But the part in the middle, the sort of French sounding part, that's missing anyway. Whether it's a clarinet or not, it's not there. The part where they go into jet during Picasso's Last Words, all the strings are missing from that because they hadn't been recorded yet. They were recorded 3 days after this mix was created. So that sounds very different. It sounds a lot more intimate, and you really, really realise just how much the strings are adding to that song. The middle sort of wanders around a while. You can only assume it was left sparse because Paul knew it was all going to get filled in later. So it was just literally left there for timings, maybe some bass to sort of keep an essence of what chord it was all in. But essentially, I think Paul probably knew that he was going to fill all that in later on. This was a sparse mix, so that Tony Visconti, the orchestrator, could see what needed adding. And then finally, the final song on here, Let Me Roll It. The intro sounds full, but then at one point you've got Paul making does this little shout out. It's sort of almost like a little chicken impression. Don't know where that came from, but that's there, catches your attention. There's even more reverb on the lead vocal. I was expecting it to have none because it was an early mix, but there's actually more on there. Very much, if you're familiar with different types of reverb, it sounds like a spring reverb that's on Paul's voice, very heavy. There's some additional traces of lead guitar in the choruses, not massively, but during the choruses you can definitely hear parts of lead guitar that you won't hear on the final mix. Other than that, Let Me Roll It feels fairly complete. It's just, you could tell it was just different mixing choices that were made later on. And as I said, there's no Helen Wheels on there. So I found that a really interesting listen. I'm going to go back and listen to this a bit more often. I've seen lots of comments from people saying, what's the point of this? What's the point in having a sort of a part-way through mix of the album before it's even finished? And I think I'm looking at it a bit like if somebody's interested in the history of things. Let's say you're interested in the history of a world event. You might not just be interested in the final outcome. You might be interested in the events that led up to it. How did it become that event? And I think that's what this is. This is, if you regard Band on the Run as a historical event, this is giving you a chance to hear partway through that process how we were getting towards the final result. It's a shame that something like this wasn't on the original archive collection. It probably should have been, but I think the archive collection was a very different thing back in 2010 when it first started than what it is now. Let me know whether you're getting this. If you've heard it already, what do you think of it? And don't forget, this Sunday night, 4th of February, if it's too late for that, it'll be there on catch up. I'm going to be doing a live stream all about Band on the Run. I'll be doing a World Cup of your favourite Band on the Run songs. We're going to see what comes out as the winner. You will decide that, not me. So I hope you can join me for that, and thank you very much for watching. See you again. Bye.